can't replace part of the brain. Like, you
treat them the same.
A source of truth for the medtech industry.
Coexists with the province.
Robot understands things automatically.
Number one show in the medtech industry.
So Stryker got ahead of that and changed in the 90s, built $1 billion company that held up high, a lot of things.
State of MedTech with your host, Omar and Khateeb.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the show. Now, when you look at the medtech startup landscape, there's a lot of different phases a company goes to, but probably and arguably one of the most important areas is the regulatory side, because if you don't get that correct, your entire investment can be wiped out. And so this is an area that's extremely important to understand. It's important to invest in it. And so we're doing sort of a state of medtech regulatory. And so for that, I wanted to invite my good friend, Kwame Ulmer, who I've known through the industry for a while. He has a wonderful reputation. I'll give him a second to give a little bit more background on himself, and also joined by his colleague, Soumya Mahapatra, who is also joining us. We're going to be doing a state of medtech regulatory, and this episode or this report was essentially issued by Ascenvia, so we're going to dive into it. So, gentlemen, give us a little bit of background, each of you, on yourselves, and then we'll dive into the report.
Okay, I will go. Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Soumya. I'm the founder and CEO of a regulatory information management platform that is built specifically for medical device companies. My background for the last 20 years has been all in healthcare, with almost half of that, a decade, in life sciences and specifically in medical device industry. Within that, my work experience has primarily been in building digital transformation as a practice to transforming business processes within large healthcare organizations. So when I look at medtech, I see a huge opportunity that lies not just with the industry as a whole, but within each function that supports this medical device industry. So I'm excited to be here and talk how it relates all to the medtech industry and the state of it today.
And I'm Kwame Ulmer. I'm fortunate enough to serve as the managing partner of MedTech Impact Partners. We're a regulatory strategy consulting firm. I've been working in the medtech regulatory field for 22 years, 12 of those years at the FDA evaluating medical devices, a handful of years working at a large business, a class 2 medical device business where I ran regulatory and quality, and the remainder helping companies navigate the FDA and serving as a venture partner at an early stage healthcare fund. Along that journey, at a conference like how I met Omar, I met Soumya as he was building Ascenvia, and I'm a user of the solution in addition to being an avid supporter of it.
Fantastic. And I guess for the report that we're going to dive into, the listeners will be able to download or find it somewhere. We can leave a link for them in the show notes, but where, if they want to learn more about, where can they go?
They can download it from our website, but also drop a link here that they can readily use it afterwards to be able to download the report. Or I can also share a copy of it with you so you have it. And when you're pushing it on your LinkedIn feeds and other social media, please feel free to include that as well.
Sounds good. So for the listeners who are listening, go ahead and just check the show notes below for the link and get that report. So, gentlemen, let's dive into it. So what is the state of regulatory in medtech? What do we need to know?
I'll start. Soumya gave me permission to start, and he can jump in at any point. It's active. It's robust from a U.S. regulatory perspective. The FDA continues to promulgate guidances. The number 2 most common guidance is around AI/ML. So that still is an area of interest on the for-profit side and the government side. There's been an explosion, a nearly doubling of the number of denovos that have been submitted. For many years, probably before about 5 or 6 years ago, the denovo was the least used application type. Now it's number 2. 510K continues to be the workhorse. And we have some amazing insights. Soumya and his research team have some amazing insights around breakthrough designation. Does it matter anymore? We've been talking to companies. We talked to over 95 companies to try and answer that question. Does breakthrough matter? And we have an initial answer for that.
That's fantastic. With the de novo applications, you're right. It's usually not a common pathway. Of course, 510K, I don't see it ever going away as the main workhorse, but was the rise in de novo mainly because of the explosion of AI and ML?
I have an opinion, and Soumya, you may have an opinion. I think it was because the FDA started issuing more clear guidance on that pathway, and the reforms that they instituted really forced the agency to say there is this middle ground between a high-risk PMA and a moderate-risk 510K, and it is called de novo. And obviously, de novos are still moderate risk, but really, if I had to be candid, I think a big factor was before about 5 years ago, there was maybe one or two guidances on denovo. They were not super clear, and people view them as the riskiest application type with the least clarity.
So why is that, by the way, that denovo is considered like the most, or used to be considered the most risky?
I think some of this is I align with what Kwame mentioned, right? We wanted a middle ground, which is not exactly a 510K with substantial equivalence that you can establish with the prior device, and yet not as high risk as a PMA, which can take several years, a lot more clinical heavy data. I think the advent of software and AI and machine learning, and the fact that these are not static at the point of when you submit, but also have the ability to learn and improve over a period of time, looking at different indications, also looking at evolving indications, is what led to this rise of de novo, I would say. And the other part that I wanted to add was innovation is very synonymous to medtech, right? Medtech and innovation are probably the most important things. The way medtech has evolved in the last 4 years, a lot has happened. One was how would we adapt to what happened during the pandemic? What new devices are coming into picture? They needed to find a way. And then through that emergency use, they had to then find a way into mainstream through an actual 510 or a de novo. Several of them were diagnostics products that were heavy on software and AI. That was one. The second is the increasing of use of AI means your products are evolving faster. That means the regulatory policies governing them need to adapt to them much faster. And the regulatory teams supporting the right pathway need to evolve almost as rapidly as possible so that the products can stay competitive and still find a path to market, but not take as long as a PMA would. And I think all of these external factors are driving this need for de novo as a preferred pathway as opposed to what has traditionally been done.
And Omar, I want to take it back because the cutting edge technological changes with AI ML, I do think in some sense forced, and this was probably 10 years ago, the FDA to start really thinking through what higher risk products that are AI ML needed more guidance and regulation. The one that jumps to my head is DermaSensor, diagnostic to aid in evaluating skin lesions. The doctor is still in the loop, but it's moderate risk for good reason, because eventually your PCP will rely on it more and more heavily, even though they're part of the workflow still. But without a DermaSensor, there wouldn't be need for guidances on AI/ML and guidances on de novo. It's a yin and a yang, a push and pull.
I just got inspired by Kwame's story. So I was at Brussels at a med conference just past week, and one of the trends that we are seeing is almost any advanced AI ML based medical device is requiring a PCCP, a new framework that FDA is still trying to adapt and learn in terms of seeing how transformative it can be, but how can it be more streamlined in terms of creating a framework. And that begs this decision to go the path of de novo, because you know it's an evolving software-based medical device that needs to be discussed and agreed upon, right? Because you can't find another product that you can say is a predicate or a substantial equivalent device. So that's the other piece to it that we are hearing.
Fantastic. What else have you guys discovered on this report? I'm looking to you guys to guide me on this, just because with regulatory, it's such a complex thing. And so there's so many things to look at. One thing I've noticed from my end with having founders and CEOs on is that it used to be that you go to Europe and get CE marking, do your first commercial launch there, get some traction and everything, and then move over to the US and the FDA. But now with the changes in FDA, that's making it easier to bring products to market here, and CE marking getting more difficult. It's almost like it's flipped.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was over 12 years ago that a collection of stakeholders said it's too much work involved in getting through the FDA. And that launched a series of reforms that eventually led to one reform was breakthrough designation. And one of the key findings after several years of breakthrough designation, some are a little more surprising than others. One, out of the roughly 1,000 breakthrough designations, roughly 10% have resulted in marketing applications. So just because you get breakthrough doesn't mean that you're actually going to get a de novo or 510K. And we looked at 95 specific devices, and we discovered that all of them got breakthrough. We compared them to the timelines for FDA review for ones that didn't have breakthrough. And for 510K, there's actually negligible time savings for a breakthrough 510K. For denovo, you can save 3 months. And for a PMA, you can save up to 7 months. So there's time savings depending on if your breakthrough in the application type. Recently, and I know Soumya has probably gotten some great insights from his trip to Europe. We met at a conference, MedTech MVP, and we got the additional insight that even though breakthrough may not automatically guarantee coverage, there still is an opportunity to get additional reimbursement through this program called NTAP. And the broader takeaway is BDD is a piece of your overall strategy now, where it used to be a major piece that you wanted to get for financial reasons. Now it's a more minor piece of the puzzle.
Yeah. I think adding to Kwame, one, I would just like to add to it, like, why is breakthrough designation important? Because I think the most important reason for getting a breakthrough designation is the face time you can actually have with FDA, right? You can have much frequent interactive review sessions, almost like Q subs, but fast tracked, right? And that definitely adds to the possibility of a product getting approved, which is always great for investors, because you now have much more predictability into your pre-market application or pre-market pathway. And that's why it's important to see, like, how many, are we seeing a lot more breakthrough designated products come to market, which we don't have enough data to say that yet. But regardless, if you're still able to stop development or your pathway into pursuing a certain pathway, and you can get that feedback early in your process from FDA, it's still a win for you because you have time to adjust and then take another course of action. So I think that's an important fact that I wanted to bring up for the audience here. Yeah.
That makes sense. So are you both suggesting that for not just investors, but medtech founders, that they should start exploring how and what they can do to get that breakthrough designation, mainly because it's a really good path to market, but more importantly, gives you a lot more face time with the FDA, which allows to de-risk your company?
Yeah, I would say absolutely consider it. And as a matter of fact, the most common question I get from companies, early stage companies, is, should I consider breakthrough? The second most common is, am I de novo? Should I try and be a de novo product? But I will say, Omar, it's not a straightforward yes or no for breakthrough, because there are a range of factors to consider regarding how beneficial breakthrough would be for you. Soumya made a great point. Maybe your lead investor loves the fact that you have these sprints with the FDA, but really the value is, I had a sprint with the FDA and negotiated from a 600 patient study to a 400 patient study. But if you have an investor who just really is keen on you having multiple engagements with the FDA, maybe that's enough of a factor to go for breakthrough just because of that. Or they like the brand recognition. So those are some of the factors I think to consider when you're going to put in that application for breakthrough.
Got it. That makes sense. What else have you guys discovered that went into your report that you think that's notable for the audience to hear more about?
I think I alluded to this fact during our conversation. And I'm obviously a little biased towards this topic, personally much invested, because digital transformation, I believe, is a great and an important aspect of running businesses today. If you're not digitally running your operations to support a product line that is increasingly becoming digital, then what implications that has. And we've explored some part of this report into, now that the products are becoming more digital, medical devices have AI, ML, at least software, most new products have incorporated some aspects of it. The product iteration cycle has accelerated, right? We used to see 3 years for a new product when it was physical only world. Now we are seeing products come with special 510Ks, 3 months, 6 months, even a year, right? And they're expanding on indications much faster than they used to. Now, in a rapidly evolving landscape, which is becoming increasingly competitive, and if regulatory is your window to look into patients and the outside world of sales, right? And if not the most important facts, but if product, sales, and regulatory are the three key levers that a medical device company should be working on as a triad, is regulatory actually coming of age to become as agile, or at least wanting to become as agile to support these product innovations and helping these product and R&D decisions become smarter and more data driven? And how are they adapting their workflow to attune with this new world that we face, which involves AI and machine learning? And with generative AI and chat GPT and AI becoming an important part of our workflows, we are starting to almost imagine some work can be done so much faster that it doesn't even make sense to do that work in the old ways. Is regulatory going to like up the game to see if we can bring some of these to make our decision-making process faster? And that's the second and important part of the report that we delve into during the State of MedTech and Regulatory Affairs.
Yeah, that made me think of the number of AI/ML solutions that the FDA has seen, and it's hundreds. It's actually over 700 AI/ML solutions. So that's the product side, but there's, in my estimation, only a handful of software solutions for regulatory intelligence that are AI/ML powered, and that is, to me, a way to optimize and go from these phone calls and Zooms about refining your indications for use to maybe using those tools to quickly assess the risks of one indication for use versus another and the regulatory implications, just as one example.
Looking at registrations, right? You have a new product line being planned. What is your launch strategy going to be? Is it purely based on where you have the highest potential to generate revenue? Or is it also going to look at, we can get to Japan in 3 months and the ROI just makes sense based on the fact that we already have our product in the US and Japan's regulations are going to be much more favorable for these type of products and devices? And can we make those types of decisions in an evolving landscape of regulatory affairs? We are seeing regulatory bodies across the world, not just US and EU, are going through massive transformation of how to incorporate digital tools, electronic tools, even with the incorporation of eStar that was recently brought up by FDA. There are authorities outside China, notably India, Japan, all of them are going through a huge or massive overhaul. And can we really keep up with these regulations of all these 150 countries and continue to be as competitive as possible? And how quickly can we adapt to this new reality? That's the question that we should be asking.
On that same note, is there anything that you would advise companies to watch out for these days and be a little bit careful? Because, there's so many things that have changed in the last couple of years in the regulatory environment. So is there something that you're advising people to pay attention to or give extra precautions around?
Yeah, I think I always bring this up that all transformation is not created equal. You should look at small wins, but also the most impactful ones, right? Not everything that the world is preaching is always right. Like a transformation, digital or otherwise, should first always be focused on business transformation. How is this specific transformation initiative going to add value to our business? And if it makes sense, we should then break it down to see how we can execute on it. And then we should look at prioritizing so that we can have the most impact on certain functions. I'll give a great example. If we could some parts of a regulatory submission so that your company can now submit 3 weeks faster, imagine the impact it can have if you're trying to bring a product to 40 countries. 3 weeks by 40, that's massive. And that is actually quantitative value that you can demonstrate to your business, right? Or your executive team. And that's the way to think about how you want to lead with which solutions you select, which parts of your business processes you want to consider transforming first, and which ones you want to keep in the back burner, right? The second aspect is technology landscape has changed so much in the last just 3 years to the last 10 years. Managing document used to be the table stake solution, right? If we are still looking at managing documents and not managing data and how we can make data-driven decisions, we are still looking at trying to use the same tools, but solving a completely different problem, right? So we have to think about what's in the market, what's available, and make these choices of just because we have a certain way of doing things doesn't mean that's how we should continue doing it. even in the future. So there's a little bit of challenging the status quo and looking at solving problems, still de-risking your transformation initiatives that you're looking at.
Got it. That makes sense. Kwame, what about you? What was your thing?
Soumya is such an erudite intellectual in this field. I was going to keep it simple. Cybersecurity is something to look out for. When I say look out for, I think there's a relatively small set of experts who have engaged with the FDA on cybersecurity issues in CDRH, the Center for Devices. So they're worth their weight in gold. The paperwork and documentation is voluminous, and the number of questions from the FDA has consistently been above 5 questions for at least the application I've been involved with. So cybersecurity, very tactical. More broadly, one of the findings that surprised me a bit was that when we looked at where the country of origin is for FDA applications, the third highest country after the US and China was South Korea. It's a little bit to Soumya's point. Perhaps you can go from strength to strength, getting your KFDA cleared and then going to the US. Having clarity on beyond just market size, what markets does it make sense to enter when you factor in the differences in the regulatory regimes?
Makes sense. And especially, I feel like every other month or something, I'm hearing about some cybersecurity issue, not just in the med device arena, but even in the healthcare system. There's a very big radiology group here in Southern California that got hacked, and they haven't been able to fix the issue. My car dealership, for a lot of people who didn't know, like Kia got 15,000 dealerships hacked and they had an issue there. So it seems to be happening all the time. And I wonder if it's cybersecurity. It's like one of those things where it's like having insurance or a really good lawyer or something. It's, you don't want to spend money on it, but then when something goes wrong, you're really happy you did.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
As we round things out, and again, I want to encourage the audience to download the report because the report goes into a lot more detail that I think is going to be more helpful to the audience. Maybe some sort of last parting words from both of you guys in terms of the big key things that you got from this report that you guys put together and advice to the audience, which a lot of them are essentially startup founders and investors, of course.
Yeah, for me, breakthrough does not have the prominence and preeminence that it once did. It is one of many factors that a CEO, a startup management team should consider in an integrated approach to going to market. That's regulatory, TSET, and the TAP program. All these are factors that they should weigh into how they approach the US market.
Fantastic. And Soumya, how about you? Any last words and advice?
I think just resonating with what Kwame said, regulatory affairs continues to be a challenging function globally, and we need to be agile and we need to find ways to support our workflows so we can make these decisions faster to support our businesses. And I think keeping an open mind and acknowledging that and taking specific steps towards it, I think is going to be critical for companies that succeed versus companies that are left behind.
Fantastic. Before we let you guys go, and I appreciate you guys coming on the show and spending some time with us. And again, I'm going to encourage the audience, check the show notes below and click that link and go download the report. But for both of you, aside from like LinkedIn, Kwame and Soumya, where can people find and connect with you?
We have a wealth of information on our website, medtechimpactpartner.com, or you can just drop me an email, kwame.ulmer@medtechimpactpartners.com.
Yeah, same. So you can connect with me on LinkedIn, Soumya Mahapatra on LinkedIn. Website is ascend.com. There's a wealth of information there, including white papers, plus the MedTech industry report. Otherwise, my email address is soumya.com, esnbia.com. So feel free to email me if you have questions.
Perfect. Kwame, Soumya, thank you so much for coming on the show. Again, thanks for the listeners who are listening. Be sure to download the report. What I recommend, go to the link below, download the report, share it with your team, and have a discussion, and then reach out to both Kwame and Soumya. So with that being said, I'm your host, Omar Khateeb, and this has been another episode of The State of MedTech. We'll see you all later. Thanks for checking out this episode. If you want to do me a big favor and join so many other people who have helped grow this podcast, take a second and look below. If you're on Apple, give us 5 stars and write a short review. If you're on Spotify, just give us 5 stars. And if you're on YouTube, hit the like button. And most importantly, if you can, subscribe. We release so many different episodes that you may miss. Be sure to subscribe and turn your notifications on. You get extra points with me if you subscribe across all 3 channels. Thank you so much. And if you felt like this episode helped you, send this to somebody who'd really enjoy and appreciate it. Share and spread the love. We'll see you all next time.